Hey, my name is Destiny Muhammad. I'm absolutely excited to be on board today with the alumni from the Black Jazz record label that had a huge presence throughout the California United States. Black Jazz record label went from 1969 to 1976. However, these jazz artists have continued. I will introduce Calvin Keys, Henry Franklin, and Doug Carn, and radio personality and all-around good guy, Greg Bridges. My name is Destiny Muhammad. I'm just going to step back, turn it over to Greg Bridges, and allow him to do more with the moderation and conversation, really, with these wonderful artists.
Well, thank you. Hello. I am very pleased to be a part of this. I want to give a big thanks to you, Destiny, for inviting me to be involved, and to SF Jazz for making this happen. And for the cats who are here today, each of whom has contributed greatly to my music knowledge, to my entertainment, and also to spiritual upliftment through music. Calvin, Henry, and Doug Carn. First off, I want to start off by saying thanks to each of you for what you've contributed to music throughout each of your careers. And we want to start talking about Black Jazz Records. As Destiny mentioned, Black Jazz, the label began in 1969, and there was a lot going on throughout society at that time. I mean, the civil rights movement had morphed into the Black Power movement. You had the Black Panthers in Oakland that began a couple of years before Black Jazz. You had Martin Luther King Jr., who had been assassinated the year before Black Jazz began. Malcolm X, who had been assassinated a couple of years before that. So there was a lot going on around society, especially when it concerned Black people. How did society's happenings influence each of you musically?
Good morning, Calvin Keys is speaking. And I moved to LA in 1969. And like I said, I was in touch with this outstanding bassist, Mr. Larry Gales, who had just moved to LA from New York after working with the Lonely and Spirit Monk all them years. And he had a coffee shop that he opened up in the Leimert Park area off of Crenshaw. And we all used to congregate there after hours, after the clubs closed. We all went over there and jammed all night. And that's where I met Gene Russell, who was the founder of Black Jazz Records. And like you were saying, there was so much going on in the United States during that time. Gene decided to do the Black Jazz Records. He asked me, would I be interested in recording? I said, I'd love it, because that was one of my reasons to move into Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And that's where it started with me. And like I said, I had met Doug and Henry and a lot of other artists that was on the label also. And like I said, it was so much going on then in dealing with us African Americans or Black folks in the United States. Like you were saying, all the masters and promoters of getting the freedom that we needed had been assassinated. And so we had to make a statement. And that's what we did with the Black Jazz record label. Mm-hmm. And like I said, the first album I did was Shanique, my baby niece, trying to capture the beauty of bringing a brand new baby into the household. That was nothing but love.
A new beginning.
My second album was Proceed with Caution. Because whatever you was about and you were brown, you had to do that. So that's a little something about me getting started into this music business with Black Jazz Records.
Right. Well, Henry, you were playing with Gene Russell when he started Black Jazz. Tell us about that time and what Gene Russell may have expressed to you, his thoughts for starting this label.
Well, Gene was always kind of a businessman, and he'd always spoke about that. When we would always talk about doing his own thing and starting his own label. And I guess when he had the opportunity, he talked about it, and I guess his record was the first BJ1. What's the name of that album? I can't remember. Anyway, it was Gene Russell's album. So we did that one, and then it just went on from there. But he had the idea of trying to form a label, and when he got the opportunity, he did.
And you're from Los Angeles. You were there, as I mentioned, with everything that was going on during this time. The Vietnam War also happening as well. How were you seeing that? How were you seeing the influence of that expressed in the area you were living? And how was that expression coming forth through music you were playing?
Well, our music was, like Calvin said, we were trying to we were offered the opportunity to make a statement. And our statement through music was, at least my statement through music was to be acknowledged, to be equal, and to be a little more militant. And my music came out that way.
Right, right. Doug Carn, phenomenal organist. Doug, after Gene, had the next release from Black Jazz Records, which was Infant Eyes, a recording that to this day stands as a monumental moment in music history. Doug, a lot of your music also was about Black empowerment and upliftment, but in addition to that, spirituality. Talk about some of the songs that you wrote at that time. I mean, songs like My Spirit, or, your arrangement of Search for the New Land. You added lyrics to some songs that already existed, and the lyrics spoke of the spirituality and mindset that was happening with you.
Well, it was happening with Black people, period, The Black church is very strong in the Black community in the United States of America. Whether you are Baptist or not, whether you are, we got a lot of Black intellectuals, that don't really believe in God at all, whether you're Muslim or whatever, you got Black Jews, but that's part of what people are into, I remember I was trying to promote a show, once in Florida, right? I was talking to my uncle, he was a DJ like you. And I said, man, it seemed like all the Black people in the church, man, you know what I mean? He said, well, if that's where they at, you gotta go get them, He was one of them kind of cats, So, but not only that, during that time, a few years before that time, I'm looking at the world, I'm looking at the neighborhood, and I see Coltrane in music. Mm. I see Muhammad Ali in sports. I see Dr. King in politics and religion, Well, Train was highly spiritual, and Muhammad Ali went so far as to be an imam there for a minute, and then, Dr. King, with the three of them, I don't know who else a young Black man would be motivated and stimulated by, unless it, just sports or automobile racing or something, So that took care of the spiritual part. But the main thing, I had come to the understanding of myself that I had dedicated this music, my life to this music, long time ago when I was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old,
Right.
And some of this music, you could tell that it was church music, but it was sophisticated. It was highly Afrocentric, but it was just songs, And so no indication what the writer really meant by the song, except which was obvious, you know. And I said, this needs to be explained, you know, so the people will know what they're listening to and what they're trying to understand, and they just taking it in and by osmosis, you know, through the sensitivity of their DNA and RNA, you know.
Right,
So
right.
and so, man, it seemed like some of the hippest songs, man, especially Lee Morgan, I single him out, you know, because he did do Spirit of the New Land, and he did do Mr. Kenyatta, you know.
Right.
But some of them, you know, the gigolo, you know, oh, you know, we got too much of that gigolo around, you know. Now the obvious thing, just like Maiden Voyage by Herbie, you know, would be Sidewinder by Lee Morgan, you know. My boy said to me, man, yeah, man, if you do Sidewinder too, you have a big hit, you know. I said, man, I ain't writing no Sidewinder. Who I want to write about a Sidewinder rattlesnake? And then he was, well, he was a procrastinator, the hip rock roller. You know what Lee's music, you know.
Right, right.
And the titles, you know, but the music itself was far beyond street culture, you know. But that's the name of it, you know what I mean? So I had to pick the ones that had a name that I could work with, you know. And so
like Search for the New Land.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Now, so he didn't say, yeah, we need our own land. We need to separate, you know. You know what I mean? He didn't go around preaching like that. He went around teaching with that horn, you know. And Lee was so soulful, you know. So this is what I did. I took what was there that fitted into my goals and aspirations and the way I wanted to see the world, man. It's nothing more beautiful to me, man, than seeing large numbers of Black people getting off on something good, you know.
Yeah.
Boy, I love that, you know.
Well,
So I'm just saying, what about the movement that stirred me to take this under my wing and want to kind of be that, you know. You know, that's what it was, just what was going on, you know. You know.
Yeah, I see how that led to some lyric writing of some things for you. You mentioned Search for the New Land, but there was also lyrics that you added to John Coltrane's Acknowledgement that I thought gave the song a different, you know, gave the listener a different experience with the song.
Yeah, because I came out and said what was evident anyway. If you look at those liner notes that Train wrote to the album, you know. But do you know what, man? It was only about 5 years ago that I discovered that Acknowledgement is a blues. It's a blues. All of them are blues.
Yeah, okay. Everything's based in that, right?
Based on it is that fast one, you know. Then when I heard Kitty Garrett play it, I said, man, this is a blues, you know. And then I started listening to McCoy's solo, and on top of, underneath all that stuff Elvin was playing, you know, and I listened to it close, and then bam, there's that change, you know. There's blues, you know. Now, that's the 8-bar blues. See, standard blues is 12 bars, you know, or 24 bars if you play a long meter, you know. But Resolution is an 8-bar blues. Then Love Supreme itself is a chant, you know. Which is a one-change blues, a one-chord blues. Now, do you know, if anybody would ask you what kind of musician Bo Diddley is, they say, well, he's a blues musician. But if you tell them that, yeah, man, everything that Bo Diddley played was only one chord. It was a one-change blues, you know. And then the psalm, the slow one, it isn't like a prayer,
Right.
but so is, send me someone to love, do-dee-da, do-dee-da, understanding the Lord, send me someone to love. And you sincere, and he asking God to help him, you know what I mean? Now we got all the other stuff, man, I boogaloo, I have Hully Gully, I have, I can drop it pop a lot till I hurt my back. But listen, man,
if anybody has heard your catalog, they know that you do it all.
Now the thing is this, Maurice White, Verdine, But see, this is the thing, man. I used to didn't really believe that the guys that make hit R&B, was falling back on Black gospel and church music, I just thought that was something small thing I didn't recognize, I couldn't quite grasp. But man, that's all they doing, A preacher on Vernon Avenue drove a Rolls Royce. He used to have a liquor store. And when he became a preacher, he sold a liquor store and kept a Rolls Royce. He said, Brother Doug, rock and roll ain't doing nothing, but gospel ain't stealing nothing from rock and roll. That rock and roll ain't steal from the church in the first place,
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because also what was going on musically during the time that Black Jazz Records was being established was a change in the music. I mean, at that time, Miles had gone electric, and other musicians began to follow suit. People seemed to start migrating away from what was called jazz to other forms of music. But Black jazz seemed to stay pretty steady in what its philosophy was and the product that came from that. Talk about that for a moment. I mean, was there ever any suggestion or any pressure put on any of you guys to come up with the hit record, No. Henry, let's start with you.
No. Gene was very loose about that. He didn't, well, to me at least, he didn't say anything about trying to make a hit or anything. He just said, bring me your music.
Mm-hmm.
So no, there was no pressure on trying to make a hit like that, no.
Really, one of my inspirers was a saxophonist who was playing on Black jazz named Rudolph Johnson.
Right.
I used to listen to Rudolph, him and Chester Thompson, and I said, what are they doing? I said, what is this music they playing? But, instead of trying to analyze it, I just went with that feeling that they got out of that music, and it was like, oh man, my goodness gracious.
Let me ask you, Calvin, was that Rudolph with Chester playing organ?
Yes.
Well, see, Rudolph didn't play with Chester on Black Jazz. Chester didn't play with Rudolph, man. But that's what I heard in 1965, right? Chester was 17 years old. They'd come to Atlanta to this club named the Birdcage, right? Him and a drummer from San Francisco named Herschel and Chester and Rudolph Johnson. And man, you know what they was playing? They was playing Speak No Evil. They was playing ESP.
Mm-hmm.
They was playing Fee Fi Fo Fum. I said, man, how you playing this thing with the organ? Man, I didn't know nothing about Larry Young. Larry Young couldn't tell Chester nothing, man. Well, what he was playing with Rudolph Johnson on organ. Now his album, what is it, Powerhouse?
Yeah.
He's playing kind of straight, mostly straight ahead traditional organ groove, but it's on a higher level, man. But what Chester can really do, he would scare him to death, man. Chester. And so by the time I got to Larry Young, Larry said, man, where you been? Where you learn how to play like that, I said, Chester, man. Chester. Chester was my ideal, man. You know, I mean, I don't want to interrupt what you're saying, but I mean, that's, yeah, well, if you heard that, Rudolph and Chester and Herschel, you heard something. Because Rudolph could do a whole lot of the stuff that Coltrane did.
Oh, yeah.
And also, Rudolph was very spiritual too. You know, he was into the Kundalini and all of that, you know, and the upper and lower chakras. You know, I guess it's the Hindu school or the Eastern school of religious and spiritual. You know, so what it was, no, they didn't dare tell us what to play, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gene would, you know, he gave us a freedom to play what we wanted. And I think that made a difference in this record label becoming what it was. Because, like I said, we had we didn't have any boundaries around it. I know I went to New York, I was working with Jackie Ivory, and we got the gig canceled, so Grant Green was in town. So I went down to see Grant, Larry Young, and Clifford Jarvis. And I said, something going on with this band that's different than the rest of the stuff we're playing. So I went back the next night, and I still couldn't figure it out. And so I went back, the third night, I went back to the hotel, and it came to me. Clifford Jarvis didn't have a sock cymbal. He was playing free time on the cymbals. And that freed up Grant and Larry to do their thing. I said, whoa. So that was part of the information that I was getting to whenever I got an album and I wanted to do an album, I wanted to try to get that same feeling, you know. Because it was like, oh, it was a whole, you know, that was like jumping off the Empire State Building with a parachute. So that's influenced me to try to go the direction I wanted to go in terms of whenever I did get a chance to play a record, you know, record a record. Right. And basically, if you listen to Shanique, man, it was the blues, like Doug was saying, it was the blues. And then that's where, you know, that's part of our DNA is the blues.
Right. Blues is the root, man. Blues is at the root.
Yeah, you know, because when I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, in the Midwest, and like I said, you call yourself a guitar player, you didn't know honky tonk, Gatemouth Brown's Okie Doke Stomp, or the Hideaway, you wasn't in the game. Call yourself a guitar player, you know. And all that came to Los Angeles when I moved out there in '69. Excuse me. And still trying to advance my knowledge of the music. You know, how could you not go to Larry Gales' coffee shop after the clubs closed? Because that's where all the musicians went to. And everybody was in there. It was like, you know.
It was like Minton's in Harlem.
That's right. It was incredible. And Gene seen what was happening. He knew, he had a premonition. He said, man, all these badass cats around here. And every night, anybody in Los Angeles, African Americans playing music, got the word was out that Larry had the coffee house, and that's where they went. If you wanted any kind of musician or anybody in town, that we'd go there and they'd be there, jamming until 5 and 6 in the morning. So he knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, what was the recording process like, or the recording scene like for musicians, particularly African American musicians at that time? Were there labels that you can go to before Black Jazz? What was that process like for each of you?
Well, that was Gene's main reason, one of his main reasons for starting that label, because he knew there was so much talent in well, not only in Los Angeles, but in the world, so much Black talent, and it wasn't even acknowledged by the bigger labels. The labels, they wouldn't even consider our music. So that was another reason for him starting the label.
Wait, tell me though, Henry, was it that they wouldn't consider the music, or they wouldn't consider the music with brown faces?
Well, definitely from Brown Faces. So Gene saw that, it's definitely from Brown Faces, sure. And
There's a little more to it than that. They only wanted to accept who would do like they say do, because all the rest of them was black and brown, the whole black, brown, and gray. But they wanted people that would do like they say do, and they scared of us who don't do like they say do. See, then it's a money thing too, because they want the publishing. So if you're playing your own music or you playing Horace Silver's music, those big publishing houses that publish the standards, Here's That Rainy Day,
Right.
Tenderly, the same old music, My Funny Valentine. If you ain't playing, and all of the bad boys played that because, our people, we liked it too. We were romantic, and we liked educated women that was romantic that just didn't want to do the hoochie coochie, like the standard thing that they was into, and so I mean, that's what it was. But man, they even to this day, they blackballed Shirley Horn for 15 years because they decided to put her on the Newport Jazz Festival. She said, "Okay, that's great." They said, "We're gonna put you with this bass player and this drummer." He said, "Well, I wouldn't mind doing it, but I would like to use my own band." And this guy, he was furious that she wouldn't obey him. I hear somebody that's got twice as much education.
Right.
And as a piano player, this guy wanted to be a piano player too. But once he decided that he couldn't be number one, he decided he'd be a promoter, and do major jazz festivals all over America, So that's what it is. And then too, the same thing with managers. You say, yeah, you got to get a white agent, See, they want to take credit for what we do and achieve no matter what it is, So if you seem like the kind of guy that won't behave himself, So when I meet these other people, I grab them in the collar with both hands the first time and look them in the face, And if they act too strange, I say, I just want to see how sensitive he was, I said, you can't be around a cat like me and can't take a little teasing, You know what I mean? I said, I'm old enough to be your daddy now, You can't tell me what to do, I don't feel like playing if I gotta play what you say play. Slavery is over. If I'm looking now, see if Sun Ra can work, even after he's dead, anybody should be able to work, black. If you want to do what you do, somebody gonna like it, You don't need no, oh man, it's crazy, man.
Well, how much did having albums help you on the other end of business as well? How much did it help get the next gig?
I've been getting a gig all my life, Seemed like I used to make more money when I was in high school and college than I got with a hit record on the radio, coming out, And then I tell you, to this day, black businessmen have paid me more money than the white ones, I'm telling you, it's one or two gigs that I had, and more recently when me and Gene got back together, then I started making a decent salary, And if you remember when Bird and Billy Eckstein and all of them had this gig in Hollywood, and they drove all the way out there, and they came to set up. They had to make them come in the back door, and they said, "Well, hey, we got to come in the back door. I mean, ain't nobody here. The club's not open now. We understand. We're not trying to buck the system. But Bill Eckstein just didn't like it. One word led to the next, and they decided they weren't going to play. They drove all the way from New York to LA, and the people didn't treat them right. They didn't play, so they was down in the hood, you know. And so they was out in the hood on Central Avenue and having dinner. And one of the local gangsters, one of them bumpy green kind of people, came in there and says, "Yeah, man, I see you guys down on Hollywood, man. That's wonderful, man. You used to come play in the clubs, you know." They say, "Well, we ain't playing." This is what you mean, you ain't not playing. No, we ain't playing, man, because they want to make us come in the back door just to get set up, you know. They said, air conditioning man come in the front door, the painters come in the front door, you know, why we gotta, and we find great artists, you know. So he said, "Well, look, how much they was paying with y'all, you know, how much was y'all gonna make it?" He told him, he laughed, he said, "That ain't no money. Y'all come into my club and play tonight, tomorrow night, and Sunday, I'll pay you that." You know, never underestimate the black man. You sure did, you know. Man, they won't, and then you got to be honored to take them gigs, you know. You got to feel honored, you know.
Right.
And we invented honor, you know. We invented the honor God, you know.
Well, I again have to give thanks to Gene Russell for creating Black Jazz Records and a platform for a lot of previous behavior to be confronted and combated. One of the things about Black Jazz, in addition to the music, was also the look of the label. You know, you'd have the logo itself, the Black Jazz logo, which was two black fists in greeting. You had the cover art, which was black and white photography and black and white art exhibits, really, on an album.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know musicians take care of the music, but did any of you have any involvement in the artwork for your albums itself? Did you have any involvement in how the look of the album would be?
Yes, and I'm gonna get out the way because I've been talking too much, but I conceived the whole thing, you know. I conceived my whole thing, the album covers, you know. But I didn't conceive the picture on the flip side, but the location and what me and Gene would be wearing. Conceived the whole thing.
Cool.
Yeah. Excuse me, as a matter of fact, you know, that second album I did with Black Jazz was Proceed with Caution. And, you know, I'm making a statement, letting them know that I'm an African American. I had on a leopard robe with a hat. And I had my guitar in one hand and my spear in the other. When you seen that cover, you knew what Calvin Keys was somewhere about. And I mean, it was just something that I felt I wanted to make that statement. And that's what I did. And then again, it was a part of Black Jazz Records that we hadn't mentioned yet was the album I did was in quad. They had a 4-channel quad come out, and that was the first adventure of them dealing with quads. Instead of stereo, they had 4 channels. And that was a prime example of it. See, a lot of people didn't know that because they didn't have the machines to even play them. But that was another experimental adventure that Gene Russell and them went through with the Black Jazz Records. It was quad sound, mixed in quad.
Right.
Like I said, when you seen, and then Gene and Doug had some other identification with their album covers and stuff. So did Henry Naimbo. And then Smith finally, he was a brother that, I think he teaching out to UCLA. And he's the one that decided to give us all our African names. It was another part of Black Jazz Records because he named me Ajafika. And I said, well, what does Ajafika mean? Pete, he said, one who has not yet arrived. I said, I'll accept that because I'm on my way. Right. Henry was Naimbo. Doug, what was you and Gene's Africans' identification.
Abdul Rahim Ibrahim.
Right on. See, that was what was happening with this black music. It was, this black jazz records was making a statement about the African Americans in our music, and
Right,
that was
right.
part of it too.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Identification.
As far as the covers, we were able to pick our own whatever we wanted for the covers. I think as long as it was in black and white to follow suit, that worked.
You know, to save money too, those color albums cost money. If you remember,
That's right. That's right.
Blue Note only used 1 or 2 colors,
Right,
on the album covers.
right.
And every now and then, one like Horace Silver, Song for My Father and the Cape Verdean Blues, they'd be like a full color portrait,
Right.
So many of the clubs, that it'd be a black and white with a blue lens on it, tinted blue, or with one. See, it could look like 3 colors, because white is a neutral stock, and so they put a little blue in there, or pastel pink, or beige, tan, and Blue Note. But the graphics design was consistent, and so it was a product, So it's the same thing with black jazz, they just, I don't know, it's almost like they stumbled on it, because nobody didn't have to tell nobody what the vision was, what the idea could have been. It kind of shaped itself. And the public, the black public, they said, this is it, this is what we want, But I tell you, these young people who's looking at this here, if you want that, you better build it yourself. Now, all you students and young people, most of you are actually not musicians. You just study this thing about the musical and jazz history of our people during a certain time frame that we've been in here, So that means your job is to buy 2 or 3 radio stations. Your job is to invest in a group of black entrepreneurs and build clubs and build theaters, to facilitate, our culture, all we can do is play the music, It says, yeah, man, when you gonna put out a new record, Like I can be like Twang, Magic Twanger, Froggy, and create a record company, That's a full-time job in itself, you have to do that,
Yeah, well,
So,
that's something that I wanted to talk with Henry about specifically right now, because Henry has SP Records, which has put out for the last several years your recordings of 3 More Sounds. As a label head today, what are some of the things that you may have gathered from working with Black Jazz Records and the other labels that you've worked with? How does all of that come into play for you owning your label today?
Well, it all comes into play, but what I've learned is to try to be fair to everybody. That's the main thing, and everything else that works out by itself,
Mm-hmm.
But because all these other companies really like to rip you off.
Oh.
And this doesn't happen with our label. Everybody's got their own publishing. Everybody's got their own everything that they need. We're more so like in an advisory capacity.
Mm-hmm.
You mean your record label, not Black Jazz?
No, we're talking about SP Records.
Right,
Okay.
right. In comparison to Black Jazz, talk about that, your label, compared to what you were doing before.
For Black Jazz Records?
Before Black Jazz, with Black Jazz, and now with SP.
Repeat that question again.
Yeah, before Black Jazz, how did you see the business, and what part of the business did you bring into what you're doing now?
Before Black Jazz, I think, well, I've learned quite a bit from being on Black Jazz, as with the 2 or 3 other labels I've been on since then. And it all comes down to the same thing. If you don't have control of it, it gets away from you. So knowing that, with SP Records, we don't let that happen, because everybody's got their own input, everybody's got their own everything that they need, you know.
Right.
We're not involved with them financially for them to financially lose, only financially to gain. In other words, they're more in control of their own product.
Okay.
Greg, I've been fortunate enough to, from my experiences with Black Jazz Records, to I've been involved with another 4 or 5 record labels.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's all about what we've been talking about in terms of what we went through with Black Jazz. And I'm fortunate enough to end up with this record label that I'm with now, and it's called Life Force Records.
Oh, Dewan Muhammad's label.
Yeah, you see, that came from Billy Higgins. But see, this music that we're playing, I've been fortunate enough to be involved with some record labels that are still doing the same thing that Black Jazz Records started. And that's us African Americans having our own businesses, running our own businesses, and producing our own music.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can talk about some experiences I've had with record labels that make you want to go do something to somebody. But hey, man, we always have had.
You always hear those stories.
That's why I say you got to proceed with caution.
Right.
I recorded for another label, a Black-owned label in Los Angeles, and I did an album called Full Court Press.
I remember that album.
I released it. We released it. And at the same time, Sade was coming out. And so my album charted Sade, and we had no promotion. And I was so the boys that was running the label got me up in the office and got to talking to me. And I'm looking at a Rolls Royce and yachts and everything. And so I think maybe first couple of 2-3 weeks, a month or so, we did 4,000 or 5,000. And so the owner of the label went down to these promoters to get paid. And when he walked in the office and asked them about the money that we've made off of selling the LPs, they gave him a bill.
What?
Yeah, they gave him a bill saying that this is what you owe us. And he said, all the records we done moved in the last 3 or 4 weeks, you talking about we owe you? He said, well, that's the way the game goes. He said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna take every one of them albums and put them in my garage. And you can't have no more of them.
Yeah, shelter.
Yeah, and then they blackballed it. So I said, wow, man. I said, well, these dirty, whatever. But anyway, that's part of the business that we've had to deal with, being who we are and what we represent. And you know, Black Lives Matters, I've had so many calls about Black Jazz Records because of the Black Lives Matters movement. So these boys they're good. They're good. But like I said, when Destiny called me to come and do this with her in these, letting the people know what's happening with this label, I was astonished, and I feel very good because it's, you know, we get more action internationally than we do nationally. But
right,
nationally, we'll start getting some more play out of our albums. And I got, you know, hey, it's a job. It's a job.
Well, you know, in addition to my work in radio, I've also worked as a record buyer for a music chain, and this was during the time that Black jazz was again being relaunched. But before then, the only places that I could get any Black jazz titles from would be from Japan, you know? So I would see that, you know, Black jazz was still in existence and still had a great presence in Japan. I would listen to DJs who were doing things, you know, over in London and in South Africa, and see that in their mixes, they were including different songs that were on the Black jazz catalog. You know, as time moved on, as hip hop progressed, you know, hearing groups like A Tribe Called Quest or Ice Cube or Pete Rock and CL Smooth, who had sampled music from Black jazz records, I could see that that influence was still there, and there was still a strong presence. Actually, I'm wondering, have any of you seen any kind of change in interest in your music due to hip hop, due to the sampling?
I'm sure we have. As a matter of fact, I've had several songs of mine recorded by a couple of the hip hop artists. Matter of fact, I was looking through my catalog last night, and somebody was advertising that they had a copy of Shanique, my first album. And it was an original. I don't know why, I have to do a little more research, but it was for sale for $1,299. And it was a nice compliment to me, but then again, it was shocking. I said, what? So I'm gonna do some more research, but our music has never, you know, it always has been played. We went and did a 50-year and concert halls last year over in Europe, Paris and Germany. And they treated us like we were the Grateful Dead or somebody. You know, we did 2 short clubs, and both clubs were sold out. The owner said, we've never had this many people in here to hear y'all and hear this music. And so it don't be for the coronavirus, we'd probably be over there touring right now. But like I said, that was a blessing, because we knew our music was being played, but you know, the response we got from over in Europe, in France, it was like, oh my goodness gracious, gave me 10 more years of living.
Yeah.
Well, tell me, what does that say to you when, oh, I'm sorry, Henry, I didn't mean to cut you off, because I know, you know, getting back to sampling, that man, one of your songs has been sampled quite a bit. And
well, yeah, there's a couple of them. One of them was written by Al Hall Jr., Cosmos Dwellers. Tribe Called Quest, they sampled that one. And a couple of groups have recorded The Skipper and sampled it.
right. Soft Spirit has also been sampled a bit too, man.
Soft Spirit too, yes.
Yeah. But what I was going to ask, Calvin, when you mentioned the response that you received playing outside of America, you know, what does that say when you're getting more response and your music has a greater longevity outside of the place that you call home? I mean, what does that say to you, and how do you feel about that?
Well, like I said, I was in shock about what they was asking for some of my music. And it was a very nice compliment. And it was, you know, just don't imagine, we can't imagine what the world think about music by being here, because we don't seem to get that same type of response. And like I said, you know, Doug, Gene, Henry, they co-signed this, man. It was like, wow, a whole new thing of music. Where these cats come from? We've been around for 70 years.
Right,
But
right.
like I said, it was so much respect for the music, man. Go ahead.
It's unbelievable. But I'll tell you one thing. When I used to go to Europe in the 80s and 90s, and well, ever since the 80s, every time I would go to Europe, somebody would always come up to me with an album,
Mm.
either the Skipper album or the Skipper at Home, and ask me to sign it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wow, we didn't do too bad. Like, contrary to what they say that we owe them money for non-sales, I don't care if we were in Switzerland or Yugoslavia, somebody would always come up with an album, want me to sign it. So distribution was wonderful. And, we were doing it for a long time over there,
Mm-hmm.
just like America.
Well, they got some of the most beautiful compliments, man. And that makes it all worthwhile too.
Right.
I said it's hopefully these young people that's coming up under us, our kids and our grandkids and everything, would try to get some encouragement of what we're trying to explain to them about the music, and keep on stepping. Keep creating.
There's a generation of listeners right now who aren't aware of the legacy that each of you have. And I should once again introduce you all for folks to really understand. Henry the Skipper Franklin is a cat who has played with many. You've heard him on Hugh Masekela's biggest hit, Grazing in the Grass, amongst many. He's also played with Gene Harris and the Three Sounds. He's led his own groups for numerous years. And as you've heard a little while ago, he has SP Records, which houses a lot of his music and the music of the group Three More Sounds and other things. You've got Calvin Keys, who's played with Ray Charles and Ahmad Jamal, and played with many others and influenced many others. I mean, actually, Calvin was an influence on the great Pat Metheny, to the point where Pat Metheny named a song after Calvin Keys. So Calvin is a cat who continues to perform and record today. And Doug Carn, another cat who continues to perform and record today, but his legacy goes way back. Doug has played with Shirley Horn and Lou Donaldson, led his own groups through some of these phenomenal, groundbreaking Black jazz recordings. He's also played and performed with Earth, Wind and Fire. He has a new recording out now. I'm glad to say that each of these musicians here today are musicians who continue to do what they do, which is what first gave us the love for what they do. But Black Jazz Records also had quite a roster that included, you mentioned earlier, Rudolph Johnson on saxophone, the group The Awakening, Chester Thompson, the organist, Walter Bishop Jr., the pianist, Kelly Patterson, the vocalist, bassist Cleveland Eaton, Gene Russell himself. Black Jazz has and had quite a roster. So it's good to see that you cats are still out here, spreading the word and giving acknowledgement to the legacy of this label. And, Doug, in an earlier conversation, you mentioned that Black Jazz didn't just stand for, the music jazz, Blacks in jazz, but it was also a lifestyle, an attitude. Blackness is more than just a color. Talk to us about that for a moment, Doug.
Well, I'll give you one example. You know what a Barbie doll is?
A million times over, millions of million times over.
Well, if you paint a Barbie doll black or brown, you still got a white person. It's more than the color of the skin. It's more than the shape of the nose or the waistline or the kind of hair,
Right.
It's an inner thing that has no color, no shape, and no form, we almost don't know what it is. We just know what is theirs. So we just take it for granted, like the pygmies in the Yaturi forest. They don't have a word for God in their language. You know. So the thing is that it's kind of inherent, you know. But so some lighter complexion people are blacker than some dark complexion people when it comes down to it, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, you take a guy like Jackie Mack. Jackie got so much soul, you know, and then you take some of these guys that are very dark, then they don't seem to do as well as a performer, as an artist, you know. But black is a cultural experience and a proclivity toward a certain cultural point of view, you know, and it has to be reinforced. It ain't just who's dark skinned, you know. You see a lot of these guys that they pretend to be normal, you know, a status quo type of colored people, Negroes, or you know, African Americans or whatever. But you never see a band with any intelligent musician of the Negroid people, you know, sub-Saharan Africa. So yeah, we're gonna get a band, but everybody got to be dark skinned. We don't want no light skin or brown. They don't know. There ain't no such foolishness as that. They know better than that, you know. They don't even say that, you know. So if black is it, you know, why not get a football team or a basketball team with everybody dark skinned, you know? You know, it ain't that, you know. Man, I see a couple of times. I was at Howard University, right? And it was in the 80s, and they was into this certain mode where they wanted all of the homecoming queens to be dark complexion and nappy headed, you know. It was like a joke to them, you know. But so I had to tell them, you know, because I did a 2 weeks artist in residence. I said, man, you going around here talking about this and that and put these, I could see if they was A students, you know, but you put these, I said, man, and all these fine red bones walking around here, and you get the ugliest black thing you can find and put out there for homecoming queen for a joke, you know. You know, I said, what you mean, Doug? What you mean, Doug? I said, like that room right there, sit behind that desk, you know. You know. And when the meeting was over, she came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, thank you, Mr. Doug. I said, what you doing after class? It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. But, you know, they say, yeah, not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character, you know. You know, well, what about the color of your skin, the content of your character? They'll be messing with me and my children, you know, crazy. You know, but there's so many things, so many contradictions. But one thing I want to say, and it's kind of changing the shift thing, man. But like we was talking about Rudolph Johnson and people like that, Chester, man. Listen, man, Henry Franklin is one of the best bass players that ever was, because the bottom line is, how does that stuff sound? It ain't how fast you play, how many hit records you had, how many gigs you played with Miles, how do you sound? And I don't know, that bass Henry got must be at least $50,000. And what Marcellus play a trumpet that's $4,000. And everybody saying that it's too much, right? They don't say it's too much because they want one of them Benzes, you know, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
They go and buy it, you know. Yes, but he's always in tune. His timing is great, you know. You know when we was playing Passion Dance in Yoshi's, right? And we decided we was gonna play the form instead of still on the one.
Yeah.
And when we got to that first change, you looked at me with that eye, and I looked at you with the other eye. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
You say, yeah, little nigga, I just want to see you was lost. You know,
Right,
you're the great .com, but I'm older than you.
right.
Well, that leads up to my next question, which
No,
is,
let me finish this.
oh, okay.
So, but see, that kind of thing is the same thing LeBron and them use in the NBA. That's that thought, process. See, the speed of thought is faster than the speed of light, So when they steal a ball and make a fast break, you outrunning the defense
right,
so hard that you know that you ain't gonna have time to slow up and stop and put it in there in the hole, right? So what does he do? He just take the ball and bounce it off the blackboard because his boy's right behind him. His boy's right behind him. If he bounce that ball off that blackboard, the boy get it sweat. Only we got that, We only got that. We ain't got the nuclear bomb. I hate to see what it be we had, Now Calvin Keys, right? So many things about a guitar player with any other instrument. They got to be in tune, With Calvin's, he's knowledgeable of chords. He swings. He can play blues and straight ahead. He can go outside, but he played with Ahmad Jamal.
right.
Now anybody with any sense at all know that Ahmad Jamal don't need no guitar player. Why Jamal need a guitar player? Well, one reason, because he liked him and it sounded good and contributed. Most piano players that say they're good, they don't need no guitar player. My organ stuff in certain formats don't have no guitar player, but then in certain other forms, I have to have Calvin Keys and somebody else too, So, it's a funny thing, man. Calvin told me way back in the Tiki days, he said, yeah, man, I dreamed about you. One day we're gonna play some great music, But I said, yeah, but I don't think it's gonna take 50 years for one day to come. God damn. And we still alive,
Right.
And that one day has lasted 50 years.
Yeah. And then we strong enough to still play hard,
Right.
Yeah, we play hard. Go ahead. Unless you
Well, yeah. Well, so actually, your statement still leads to this question, and it's out of the music that you know on the Black Jazz catalog, and this is for each of you. Outside of your own music, name one recording that you would select to listen to.
Well, it wouldn't be my own music anyway that I would select in the first place. Because, I already got that,
Right.
But it would have to be, I never thought about it, It's just like saying, what's your favorite food, But what's your favorite steak,
Well, just for this moment, because your favorite could change, in another moment, but just for this moment right now.
Okay, I ain't gonna let you get me on one point. The thing is it the one that I'm listening to then, that's the one. The one that you listen to. It's just like we all sit down here and argue about who's the best trombone player, who's the best drummer, who's this, who's the baddest, Elvin or Tony, right there. But what's the best is the one that's up there on that stage doing it while we sit down here talking.
Well, no, I'm not asking what's the best. I'm just asking which one would you choose to listen to right now at this moment?
Well, look, right now at this moment, I have to think about it, man. I can't say, boss.
Okay.
So much good music out there we listen to.
No, we just, with black jazz, I can't say. But I tell you, man, but Rudolph Johnson,
Ooh.
Yeah, Rudolph
It was great.
Johnson. Yeah, Rudolph Johnson. Yeah.
But you know that album that Rudolph did, it didn't portray what Rudolph Johnson can really do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was kind of, I don't know, he was stretching for something else on that album. If you heard him live, like I know you have,
Ooh.
you know, well, this boy was right next to Train.
Mm.
I know.
Well, we know he was a trainologist, but like I said, he went to a whole nother level as he got older. I used to, you know, I worked with Ray Charles when Rudolph was in the band. And after we did the shows, we would go up in the rooms and do some playing. And my goodness gracious, I wish we
That's
could
what I'm telling you.
some of that, you know, but hey, man, it was, like I said, he inspired me tremendously. I'm still trying to figure out some of them arpeggios. But like I said, is that question you asked, Craig, it's a little difficult.
I know goddamn well it is.
I mean, you know, right now, the way I'm feeling, with being inspired with this, what we're doing here now, for some reason, and I'm in such a beautiful mood, man, it's just that I keep hearing Naima personally.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that is a difficult question. And beside my own music, I think since I recorded on one of Doug's albums, Infinize, and I recorded on a couple of Calvin's albums, I've got to say both of them. I can't just say one.
Yeah.
So I'm going with both of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, Black Jazz Records has a vast catalog. It seems like every few years or so that the catalog is being reissued once again. So I hope everyone takes the opportunity to pick up some of the different recordings from Black Jazz Records, Calvin Keys' recordings, Henry Flankin's recordings, Doug Carn's recordings, or the recordings of some of the other musicians that we mentioned, Kelly Patterson, Walter Bishop Jr. There's a lot of great things being offered for listening pleasure, for spiritual pleasure, and for upliftment through Black Jazz Records. And I know that there are so many other stories and so many other conversations to be had. And I look forward to us gathering together again to talk more about Black Jazz Records. But I want to give a big thanks to Destiny Muhammad for making this happen. Big thanks to Destiny for inviting me to be a part of this with three musicians again who were definitely a part of my growing experience. And big thanks to the SF Jazz for giving Destiny this platform to make this happen.
And also Rebecca.
And Rebecca Molion, of course, Rebecca and everybody at SF Jazz. Big thanks to all of you.
All right, well, since y'all talking about ladies and the kind of ladies y'all like, I just want to say one thing. If it had been for my mother, number one, who's a music teacher and stuff, right? But all this time, you know, we ain't said nothing about Jean. I mean, it's kind of taken for granted. She wasn't signed to the label. But hell, if it wasn't for that woman, me or the label wouldn't have been as great.
Tell it.
You know, but I mean, you know, just saying this, you got to do that, man, because you'd be somewhere and you say, well, why they didn't say nothing about me, you know?
Well, I did not in any way mean to ignore.
No.
Yeah.
No. I wish.
No, I mean, you know, listening to your recordings, I wouldn't have heard Infinize without the voice of Gene Carn.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but fair is fair, you know.
Right, indeed.
And so, like, you know, I love feminism, you know. It was really about femininity, you know. I love it. I'm all for women having power, you know. You know, they won't hit my pocketbook so hard, you know. I'm just saying, you know, that's all I want to say. You know, because see, if she wasn't such a great musician too, I couldn't have done that music. Who else gonna sing it? You know, Leontine Price. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we had to acknowledge Jean because they was on top of tables when she was over there with us in Europe.
That's right. And
They got on top of tables and run us and scream so loud and it almost gave me earache.
I just I wanted to add as we prepare to close out, I wanted to say thank you all first so much for coming on. I wanted to share a little story about Jean as we move forward. A little story about Jean because I had been hearing her voice on the 4 LPs that I had received from Chuck Webb that were from Doug Carn and Jean Carn. And I had been hearing her voice for years. And I had been invited with a man by the name of Takuma Kim, a wonderful, crazy percussionist, and a beautiful jazz violinist by the name of Tarika Lewis, who toured with John Handy for many years. We were invited to open for Jean Carn as a part of Norman Connor's ensemble in a little city called Emeryville. This has been light years. And I was excited because, one, I'm going to hear this voice and meet this woman who is fantastic. We did a sound check and Jean, we did a sound check and Jean went on and did the sound check and the voice was still as beautiful as I had heard on the recordings. It was fantastic. I'm going to close out with this story. It's kind of crazy because I was enamored and I was so excited to open for her on this date. And we're at a place that's no longer in existence called the Linen Life. It was a beautiful place called the Linen Life. I don't even know how to really explain it because they had beautiful cars in there as well as the stage for performers. And my trio and I got on stage and we were playing and the police came. Now, I don't know how dangerous a harp, a percussionist, and a jazz violinist are going to be, but the police said, if you don't get that harp off that stage, everybody is going to jail. We got off pretty quickly, and it was a fundraiser for sickle cell, and Jean did not get a chance to perform. I only got a chance to hear the sound check and what some of the selections of music that they were going to do that evening. The voice was still there. She was warm, friendly, and very supportive of what I was going to do. And it was it was crazy and auspicious at the same time. I've had the opportunity to play Doug's music as a part of my teaching work with SF Jazz and share that with the students that will see this post the performance that I did, and looking forward to even attempting to play either of Henry or Calvin's music as well. I'm so grateful that you all could come on and share this. You all have just helped me to move to another level. I got plenty of practice to do and a lot more listening to do just of your voices and your music. Greg, you know you're my dude, man. Thank you so much for your moderation and your continued support of my work throughout the years. SF Jazz, I'm going to get you for being so kind. Y'all, I'm going to get you back. Thank you all so much. Much love.
Thank you.
Wait till we play some.
Oh, I can hardly wait. I'm going to talk to you after this because I just got approached to try to transcribe some of your music for harp and guitar. So, right? I'll just share this. If you know a brother by the name of Gassem Batamatu.
Oh yeah, Gassem Batamatu.
Yeah. He hit me up just about a couple of days ago and said, I got this song from Calvin. I think that you and him would do something fantastic, just to bringing the reimagining of this music. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to even touch the hem of you all's garment in person musically.
Destiny.
Yo.
We're talking about playing the song I wrote called Touch.
Dude, look.
One of the most powerful statements we can make.
All right, consider it done. Look, y'all know we can go. So we're going to have to get together and do some virtual coffee and sharing some more, and then with God's grace, being able to come again in person and sit and touch and agree on some coffee and the movement of music into this next year and the years to come.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Later on.
Yes.